Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them, and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. 33 people in Portland who listen to this podcast every week. Guess what? August 24th, Saturday night, I'm going to be performing in your city at the Mississippi Studios Theater. Get tickets now. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Turek Books Podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today. He's a longtime friend of mine. He's a writer for the Apple show Platonic, starring Seth Rogen. And he has his own podcast with his wife called...
The Bedtime Podcast.
The Bedtime Podcast. Noah Findling. How you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good, man. It's good to be here.
It's good.
The vibes are chill.
Yes. Yeah, the vibes are chill. Haven't seen you in a while, so this podcast is turning into a good excuse to see friends.
Yeah.
Which is always nice.
That's why I do anything these days.
To see friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like any project is like, how do I get my friends to work together on something? And
I kind of have to check myself and be like, all right, quick reminder, this podcast can't be your only social life.
Oh, right. Yeah. You're like, I'll just talk to these people in a room with 3 other people there. That's a social interaction.
That's what friends are.
I have a friend of mine recently said she doesn't want to listen to my podcast anymore because then she doesn't check in on me.
Real.
She's just like, I think a lot of my friends might feel that way who listen, because they're just like, I know what he's up to,
So real. I've felt that way about social media over the last decade too. How many people haven't reached out because they could just check in on Instagram and see what's going on?
Yeah, and then they think about, and then it goes by so long, they think about reaching out, and then it becomes this kind of heavy weight.
Yeah.
It's like a bit like, oh, I have to be like, this is why I haven't seen you or talked to you in 10 years.
Yeah, because you have this weird pseudo parasocial thing together. I always thought, as a younger man, that eventually someone later in life would reach out just to confess their love to me from high school. Like, hey, Josh, just so you know, I always was in love with you. I felt like I should let you know. And it hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen.
I think it will.
You think even further than 20 years out of high school?
75?
The window is closing. The fairy tale. I mean, I'm also married is the thing for them too.
I have a similar thing, but it's that someone is going to have a totally legitimate reason for why I owe them money. Years later, I'm like, oh my God, I totally forgot. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I don't have it right now, but I will get it to you. I'm like 80.
The great delay is when you ask someone if they have Zelle or Venmo. It's just adding one more step to something that of course they have.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, why do you have Zelle? Oh, you do? Okay, well then good, because then I could send you the money, because otherwise it would have been a little more complicated.
I know.
It might take me a while.
What did we do before all that?
Yeah, just carried cash.
Or write a check and mail it?
Yeah, write a
check
and mail it. Yeah. Yeah, I remember my dad being like, Josh, don't ever leave the house without a few bucks in your pocket.
My dad gave all of my best friends, right when we were graduating high school, emergency 20s.
Oh, my God.
Which has not aged well. It's like $20. You can't get shit with this anymore.
$20 is the emergency.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is...
I only have $20?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The new I was on the bus on the way over here, and this guy starts handing other people on the bus this sheet of paper, and you get nervous about what that paper could be.
Sure.
And he reached out to me, and he told me they're his poems. He's this older kind of granola white guy, and so I took him and I gave him $1 for this poem that he handed me because people have been buying my poetry book, so it felt like a karmic thing. But shocking that I had the $1, and there was a little wrinkle in my mind that was like, what's he going to do with this $1?
Yeah. But maybe, he has another $1.
That's right.
You don't know what other dollars he has.
That's true.
Yeah.
You add the $1 to the other
He
dollars.
could have all day been like, if I could just have one more $1, I'll get something.
Yeah, this could have been what put him over the top, gotten him all the way up to 20.
Yeah, get some kratom.
Well, he's straight edge, and he
cool.
his name,
His name's Straight Edge?
No, he does mention that he's straight edge, has never done drugs. He's he kind of writes a whole long thing about himself on the paper. But I will also say he told me he got it printed for free at the library. So 100% profit, not bad at all.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, he said you could do up to 10 copies for free. So
good to know.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know that reading's out there. I felt like it was a good sign for recording this, that the words were already finding me. How are the words with you? How's your reading life these days?
Reading life is good. I didn't read I have a whole journey with reading. I feel like I didn't read for any of my 20s. And then about 2 years ago, I just it was on my honeymoon because I had like 3 weeks off or 3 weeks to go on vacation. And I brought this book on my honeymoon. A friend of mine, should I say what it is?
Yeah.
It's the Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton. Okay. Very high level educated reading. And, I brought it on my, cause a friend of mine recommended it cause he was like, if it's really good, like it's way beyond the movie. It goes to a different place and it's kind of scary. And, I was like, okay. And I read it and it was such an amazing experience to add to my wonderful honeymoon. Like I honestly remember my honeymoon as like being with my wife and then like head in this book, Jurassic Park. I'm like, what's going to happen to these raptors, you know? But yeah, and then from there I've just been, reading a lot. Now it's been a little bit of baby books.
Okay.
But I don't know. We've kind of put a pause on that conversation, so.
Okay. But you're priming yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm someone who, if something is coming up that stresses me out, I need to read everything about it. I need to like know as much as I possibly can because then it just helps me understand how to approach it. I like information.
Yeah,
is what I'll say.
Yeah, information places you, right?
Yeah,
and it takes away the mysteries and all of the sort of blind spots.
Yeah,
what could be waiting for you around the corner? If you have the information, you kind of know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also like how you look at the things that are hundreds of millions of years behind us.
Yeah.
Like the dinosaurs.
Well, what's so cool about this book is the environmental. What I really liked about it is there's an environmental theme to it. Like the scientists in the book are like very much environmentalists, like you could tell. And especially the guy in the movie, Jeff Goldblum's character, Malcolm, in the book. He is the most like he's always giving a warning about what we're doing to recreate the past and how it's probably going to hurt us in the future, which is interesting because it's like if you ever go back and look at like whatever the party you were at that you said something stupid at like a year ago, it's like it's never helpful, And then I went from this book. I'm a huge I'm a little bit of like a what's the right word? Doomsday guy.
Yeah.
And, it made me start to investigate, like, what are we doing for, like, climate change and, like really, because people are always like, yeah, they'll figure something out. And it's like, who is it? And what are they doing? And all of those questions are being asked in a lot of those scenarios. Like, for example, I listened to the podcast, The Daily, free promo, and they did a story about, this process where you basically, to cool the temperature of the earth, you like spit clouds out. I forget what it's called, if you know.
I think they call it cloud seeding.
Yeah. But it's like, then they talked about kind of what Malcolm was saying. Well, if you do that, it could create this, and this effect. And we're now in a position where we have to examine like what risks and innovation are worth what effects, and it's just like it just feels like you're constantly on like on an indie film budget. It's like, all right, we'll get the good cameras, but we're not gonna have any audio because we did that, or Maybe that's a bad example.
Oh, I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
No, it's a perfect. I don't know if everyone listening can relate to that, but that is what it's like.
Yeah.
And nature has evolved through so many centuries to work in concert with itself, and we are now this creation of it that does not.
Yeah.
And the results are fascinating. And I was thinking even before I came here of how it doesn't like Bill Gates own most of the farmland in the United States.
Yeah.
And I've heard him say that like GMOs are going to be a must for the future. And I've worked in so many restaurants and I've seen how much food goes to waste. And I'm just like, all right, do we really need to alter the DNA of food, or do we need to just change our relationship to how sacred the food is to us?
Yeah, for me, what is a GMO again? I've
like
heard that
genetically
before.
modified
Okay, got it.
organism
yeah.
or something like that. And, so it's like, making a heartier potato and how they modify the genes so that potato could grow with less water in harsher climates, whatever. And they say, oh, yeah, that's how you solve hunger. And it already is proven to solve hunger. But, yeah, what do we know about messing with nature that's ever been good for us?
Yeah.
And pointing to Jurassic Park, this conversation has been going back. I'm looking at 25th anniversary edition on your book cover. Yeah, I mean, this stuff we can't plead ignorance to the course that humanity's been on for quite some time. And it's fascinating how science fiction has pointed to that and been the exciting way to present those conversations.
Yeah, I remember in journalism school, I took some class and it was like basically saying how everything that's going to happen has been portrayed in science fiction. And it's just like, it's so true. I mean, I don't think we'll have dinosaurs. I mean, that'd be pretty sick though.
Yeah.
That would be worth it.
Just to see one?
Just one.
Yeah.
We just make one. We don't do a whole thing. They're like, well, to make one actually costs, it's a better deal to actually make 20. You can't just make one.
Yeah, I know. And you see one and then it's going to like kind of whet your appetite for some more.
Yeah, and that one's going to be lonely.
Yeah, that's true. It's like having a house cat.
Yeah.
It's much better if you give it another one so that it has something to play with.
Speaking of food waste, I wanted to say one thing, which is I went to Las Vegas with my wife for her birthday, and we went to a buffet. And I hadn't gone to a buffet since I was a kid. And the food waste, I couldn't enjoy the meal because I kept thinking about how like much waste we were causing. The spread that they put out, it's like there's no way anyone eats any of this. And then it's like you just keep making more the next day. I looked it up. And in Vegas, like Caesars and MGM Entertainment donate like 30 million pounds of food to pig farms. And I was like, that's good. But now I'm just like, so pigs are just eating like shrimp fried rice, like and just like gross, like my leftover like duck, like that can be good for them. They're not supposed to eat that, Right. Nobody is, but.
Yeah, I mean, what I remember of buffets the last time I went, which had to have been 15, 20 years ago, was you start moving at a different pace in a buffet.
Yeah.
Something in your animal brain changes and you feel like everyone might be keeping you from the buffet. You feel like you better eat faster to get back to the buffet. It's not a mentally well experience eating in a buffet.
Yeah, I think buffets are going to start to die out.
Yeah, I think they have, right?
Yeah.
I worked at a buffet too, a Sunday brunch buffet, and I don't know, something about, we couldn't donate the food because in LA there's too much legal liability should someone get sick. So at the end of the day, there was tons of leftover food and they'd throw it away because they don't want to get someone sick. Or, they don't want the legal repercussions.
Goddamn.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But you talking about science fiction, kind of, I just started Parable of the Sower. Have you heard of it?
No.
Octavia Butler. It's a very renowned science fiction book. I'm 45 pages into it. Just started it like 2 days ago. And what's crazy is I started it on the day that the science fiction takes place. So like chapter 2 opens on Sunday, July 21st, 2024.
Whoa.
And I started it on that day in the hellscape that was supposed to be the dystopian future Los Angeles, racked by climate change. The neighborhoods are behind big, tall walls if you're lucky to live in one of them. And what's so creepy so far is how like still people have to find ways to pay for things. They have mortgages, and yet the world's totally falling apart. People are getting eaten by wild dogs. They're short on water. Everything's catching fire.
But there's still that like capitalistic, like we got to keep turning the wheel.
Almost like a capitalistic regularity to things,
Yeah,
where they're
yeah.
like, well,
Oh my
and
God.
they died, so they get to inherit their house, and we're lucky we inherited this house, or we couldn't have afforded a new one. So yeah, it's like the capitalism churns on as seemingly everything else is just so massively degraded. And the writing is so good so far. I mean, it's an acclaimed book, and I feel like it's only being talked about more and more these days. And I so far can already see why. I think I'm going to finish it really fast. But
I gotta read that.
Yeah, written in 93. Just that same idea that you're talking about, like these warning shots through science fiction. And we start to see little pieces of it. I mean, big pieces of it in our day-to-day lives right now.
That interests me so much because, so with my wife and I, I'm like the budgeter, and I'm always like talking to her about like putting money away for retirement and she's just like, don't you get it? Like, in 30 years, none of this is going to look like this. And I'm like, I really don't believe you. She's like, we're not going to need a Roth IRA in fucking 30 years. We're going to be melted. I'm like, no, that's too soon. Like, that's like 300 years away. We're still like, I don't want to have to work when it's that hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, your retirement fund should just be guns.
Truly. She would love that.
Just keep assembling an arsenal of guns
and
water tanks.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think the idea of retirement. This is kind of a different conversation, but as a comedian and as someone who's writing, creative person, like the idea where I like retire and I stop doing that seems like such a foreign idea. Like I'm never gonna not come up with bits. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like there's a day where you're like, no, I'm gonna be done?
No, I mean, just like feasibly, I don't think I'll be done. Like this, for better or worse, is my only slightly bright economic path.
Mm-hmm.
But once you sort of commit to this life being who you are and what you do, and you've blown past too many other good options, it's like you're just slowly driving toward that cliff.
Yeah.
And yeah, you hope that there's like a little detour on the way or whatever, but otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to keep rolling,
Yeah.
and kind of hope for the best.
I love that. That actually takes me to my next book.
Okay.
Which is not a cliff, but it's about it's called Sphere, another Michael Crichton book. I'm trying to work my way through his work because he's a great science fiction writer, and they're just page turners, and it's just so much fun. But Sphere is about a group of, basically the Navy finds some type of ship at the bottom of the ocean, and they send a crew down there of scientists across varying fields to make contact. Well, let's just say chaos ensues.
down
Yeah.
in the underwater depths.
Yeah.
Have
you read this?
No, on the cover it just says ingenious and beguiling from Time magazine.
Yeah.
No, I haven't read any Michael Crichton. I saw Jurassic Park when I was a kid and it came out in the theaters. It was I remember my mom snuck in Subway sub sandwiches.
Yeah.
Talking about budgeting. And I remember there were too many black olives on my sandwich, and the movie was a thrill.
Yeah.
But that's my only experience with Michael Crichton, aside from seeing his books in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Back when they had books in grocery stores.
They're really entertaining, and this is way better than the movie.
Jurassic Park.
This book is way better than the movie, yeah.
Are you able to think of these characters outside of the actors who played them, or are you pretty locked in on Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum?
I mean, I actually am, but there's so much more in the book than they could ever do in the movie.
Right.
And you get deeper, especially Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum's character, you get deeper into the mathematics and like how he basically extrapolates math on our world and the environment and the calculations of if we start poking at this thing, what are the mathematic calculations of that ripple effect, you know? So, and I kind of like being able to picture Jeff Goldblum in my head. It's almost like, because so much more is in the book than the movie, it's like kind of deleted scenes, that I'm not getting to see when I watch the movie. But here I'm like, oh, cool. This is more, more of something I already like.
That's fun.
But Sphere is also a movie.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies too. Science fiction. It's with Dustin Hoffman, Samuel L. Jackson. Dustin Hoffman plays the lead character in this. His name's Norman. He was a psychologist who the Navy reaches out to years before they find this orb at the bottom of the ocean to it basically, if we were to make contact with this alien species, what would be the from a psychological standpoint, what would be like the 5 personnel we should put in front of them? And he did that not knowing what this information was for, who it was going to. It was kind of like a government job. And then years later, they reach out, and he's like, this thing that he never really thought would turn into something. Now he's like running this crew. And he's a psychologist. He's out of shape. He's not like, this is a military almost mission, like to deep sea dive that way. So, and then what my favorite thing about this book is like, it kind of, when they get into the orb, do people spoil books on here? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. When they get in, like, no one's reading Sphere. No. No, but when they get into the ship and what they find as they go through the ship, which is like this insane ship where the dimensions don't make sense from the outside, where you're like, it seems this small, but it's actually vast. They get into the ship, they see a sphere in a storage like unit that's like it's like a giant sphere as big as a room, and they can only see themselves in it, and they can't get into it, and it seems to be powered by something, but it's free floating in the air, like they have so that becomes this like alien object, and the sphere, basically they all become obsessed with it. And they're getting lonelier and lonelier at the bottom of the ocean, trying to figure out what it is. And it starts to kind of the sphere controls everybody's minds. And then basically what ends up happening is like the sphere makes everyone doubt each other's best intentions. So like someone who you think, everyone's like playing like Survivor the whole time, like on the ship. So like, and they start to grow more and more violent, and like, it's just I don't know, good commentary on like, can you trust your friend? Can you trust this person that's right next to you that's being paid to protect you? Like, and I don't know. I don't know. I really liked it.
Well, it sounds like, doubt. This thing becomes doubt.
Yeah.
Human
That's
doubt.
what it is.
And how much that could plague people about one another.
Yeah, you to the outside world they think you're one thing, but inside you think of yourself as something completely different.
Yeah, and the psychologist came to it thinking the 5 things the ways you would approach it, without ever thinking like, oh yeah, what about how it approaches us?
Yes, exactly. So there's
intriguing.
There's like a biologist. There's like just a straight up Marine. There's a guy who works in like chemistry, there's a linguistics expert. What's really cool at the end, they are the sphere. Like the sphere is basically living on their paranoia and delusion. So like as they grow more paranoid and delusion, the sphere does, and they're kind of like,
I want you to just spoil this book now.
Yeah. The characters basically start to find themselves like one by one leaving the ship to go to the ship, leaving the ship that's like their home base to go inside the ship, and they get sucked into the sphere, and when they come out is when they start to like change slightly. And yeah, at the end of the book, only a couple of them survive.
Okay.
And there's a giant squid.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Bring a little natural terror into things.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's got it all.
It really does got it all. It's very entertaining, and I like picturing, again, Dustin Hoffman, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah. So you had seen this movie too and then gone back to the book?
Yeah, my dad showed me this movie when I was like a teenager in high school. And
so Michael Crichton in particular, you're going to work through a lot of his collection?
I think so. I think I'd like to – it's like a good holiday just beach read, you know?
I love it, and I love that you resumed your reading journey at your honeymoon.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, was your wife like alarmed, or was she pleasantly surprised? She's like, okay, I married a reading man.
Anything I do that like is like different, like that I for myself, that's like not like career related, like hobby, she gets so excited by. I'm like,
cool.
She always would be like, that's so cute, you're reading. I'm like, no, it's not cute. I can read. Or like whatever, I don't know. The other day I stretch, and she's like, that's so adorable that you're stretching, you know? Or like I have like a sweet, genuine moment with a male friend, and she's just like, that's amazing.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, how awesome.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be horrible if she was the opposite?
Yeah, she was like, shut up.
Yeah, she's like, I can hear you stretching.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that sounds like the right kind of partner.
Yeah, I definitely have it.
And you brought the reading into the marriage.
That's right.
Okay, so Michael Crichton,
Yeah.
sounds solid, sounds fun. I love the attitude. I say it on this podcast all the time, like, read what you love, read what's fun to you,
Yeah.
read what excites you, and it sounds like that's what got you back in.
I'm a big sci-fi person. I just like right now I'm reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm reading all things that were movies.
Yeah.
I'm just realizing I'm just at the beginning of it. But these are more like sci-fi thrillers. That's like a comedy, sci-fi comedy.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, and about basically it starts with like the end of the world, and it focuses on this like unlikely guy that's about to survive, the only person on the planet that's about to survive, and he's just like a loser, like, you know, his house is like getting condemned when he first opens, and his best friend happens to be an alien that was sent there 30 years earlier to study Americans, or not Americans, but civilians of the population, and his ship has forgotten about him, so he's aware that this is about to happen, so he tells his best friend, he's like, by the way, I know we've been buddies for like 20 years. I am an alien. I know a way out of here. You got to follow me. And he like doesn't believe him, so he has to like kidnap him, and it's a pretty great journey.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
Douglas Adams.
it's such a famous book
Yeah.
and movie, but I actually knew nothing about it. So that's actually really exciting.
Yeah. It's very funny.
Very funny. Yeah.
Like so silly, like the way they describe aliens, where it's like he just created this like language for like this whole vast world. I'm surprised the movie didn't like blow up, because it's one of those books that you're like, Star Wars. It is like Star Wars. It's like a comedic version of that, and kind of starts in a more present time and ends up going to a more futuristic time.
Yeah, don't they call it like a space opera or something like that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. And I mean, that fantasy of being the last person on Earth is like so rich in the mind.
Yeah.
I think it must relate to like our own mortality in a way, but it's almost like an inversion of it.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're going to live forever by virtue of being the only person.
Yeah.
Even though you're not.
That would be a disaster.
Yeah. Well, and you said your mind always goes to doom and gloom in the world.
Yeah.
Like you mean that to say like you play out a lot of scenarios. You have the anxiety of the future.
I'm a big future tripper.
Yeah.
I get really high on thinking about like, oh, this, you know, like I can do it for a while. The climate change environment thing is something I have to keep in check, because it can really affect my present world. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm here in this time, and whatever happens. I really should just make the best of it. You know?
Yeah, I scale it back too, because I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I live through what could or couldn't happen.
Yeah.
My mind is constantly working that way. And then I think I'm going to appreciate nature today, because even in an ideal world, I'm only guaranteed today with nature. You know? And nature will be fine. But yeah. Like the old George Carlin thing of like, no, the earth is going to be fine. It's humans who might not.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and we live in an age where like there's no shortage of information to tickle that anxiety.
That's the thing. I'm like, was the threat always there as seriously, like in the 50s or whatever, and it was just, you just couldn't go read about it all the time.
Right. Yeah, no, carry it around with you in your hand
Yeah.
all day.
Getting an update that's like the ozone layer is falling apart.
Every day.
Yeah. Actually, that one's kind of being repaired.
Yeah, the ozone layer.
Yeah.
For me, I'm friends with some like environmental meme pages, and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm friends with them. But then it's like everything they're posting is, did you know this was the hottest day on Earth? Yeah. Oh, and that was what was interesting about this parable of the sower.
Yeah.
Is then like a few days after that, we literally experienced the hottest recorded day on Earth. Like, so this writer almost got the date to a T in a certain sense, that's even though the world she described is much further down the road. But yeah, crazy, right? Just I mean, I guess you would project in the future, you would project into the summertime to make it intense, but still, I mean, it's crazy what the collective unconscious that they tap into, their antennas kind of pick up on before other people. And just hearing you talk about sci-fi writers, it makes you think about, man, what a fertile wonderland that their brains must be.
I know.
What a way to live your life, just go into a quiet room and then go into galaxies far away.
When I read, that's the other thing. I like reading things as a writer. I don't write novels, but anything I can ingest that is unlike anything I would write, I want to read that, maybe because I hope to be able to write a sci-fi thing one day, but also it's just the most entertaining.
Yeah, there's something nice about appreciating a mind that works different from yours.
Yeah.
To not understand the source.
Yeah.
Because, if I encounter people who are similar to me, it's fun for the familiarity. But, I kind of am with you. I prefer things where, I can't even conceive of that.
Yeah. Like one book that took me a long time to read is this one. I don't know if anyone's talked about this on your pod.
No.
Portnoy's Compaint by Philip Roth. Every Jewish man must read this. It was someone had always told me, my friend had said, like, you need to read this book because your stand-up and shtick is this book. And that's a little bit like, you're just saying I'm like any other Jew, but I get what you're saying. And I read it, and it was so hard for me to get through. I ended up getting through it, but it's just like, it's Larry David, and like, I don't think Larry got his shtick from him, but certainly maybe was inspired. But it is like a comedy about a 13-year-old boy in Brooklyn in the 50s, just like growing up, and he's just like obsessed with like his penis and like masturbating, and his dad's like obsessed with like shitting and trying to take a good shit, and like his mom's like always like freaking out and always worried, and it was like, this is like, it's triggering a little bit, like it's how like a child of an alcoholic might feel about The Bear,
right?
Like they're like, this is too much, like.
Well, it's actually why I've never watched The Bear, because I've worked in too many restaurants.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to go back into it.
That's how my wife feels too.
Yeah, why take that stress on?
Also, it's like the most stressful show.
It's like when I finally read Anthony Bourdain, and he romanticized that world so much, and it was like seeing it for the first time for me, because I had never looked at it in that romantic way. And The Bear seems the opposite. It's like the de-glamorized truth. Either or. But yeah, Philip Roth, so that sounds like the bodily anxieties of life.
Yeah, it's just like, it made me, because in my growing up, not to be disgusting, but in my household, like, you were allowed to talk about all of that, flatulence and like whatever, anything gross coming out of your body. It was cool to talk about in my house. Like, it was funny, and I thought that was so unique to us. And then I read this book, and I was like, oh, it must not be, A
little more cultural.
Yeah, it's a little more cultural, and like, it's just so specific. Like, I feel like anyone.
It feels like kind of old world, right?
It's very old. I mean, it's got there's words in there that we don't use anymore.
Some Yiddish stuff?
Yeah, Yiddish, and just like, it's got that a little bit, like A Clockwork Orange has like those like slang words and stuff. There's stuff like that in it.
And it takes place in like, what, 50s New York City or somewhere thereabouts? Yeah,
it takes place there, and he's just living in this house growing up. He has an older sister, and
Might be 40. I mean, he's old now.
He's. I think he may
just passed
he
away
may have passed
recently.
away.
Yeah, he just passed away in his late 80s.
Yeah, this is a really old book, but it's still it. Once I got through it, I was happy I did because it is so funny.
Yeah,
it's just like you can't watch like Curb. You can't binge Curb because you start to be like, God, Larry, come on, don't do that again. You know, like I need a break for this guy. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little relentless. That sort of anxiety of things and.
Because I have it. I don't know if you're an anxious person. But
Yeah. You know, and my dad's half of the family, they're all Jewish. And you're hearing you say this, it's like anytime you're in the bathroom too long, you'd get out and my dad would be like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
You know, like as though some event just occurred. It's like, just those little things. It's kind of funny.
Or like in my family, like my dad, I tell a joke about this. Like any problem you have, it's like, go take a dump.
And that
what are you
solves
doing?
It. Okay, so this book was like to a T.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was fun. It's funny. I mean, it's very specific, but I say this knowing that I probably shouldn't. If you want to understand Jewish people, it'd be good to read, but it might give you a bad impression. It might not be the first.
Fair.
If you don't know any Jewish people, this might not be the book to start with.
Well, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Philip Roth. Yeah. Every time I've tried him, I've stopped pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it's just, maybe it is like a little too familiar, or maybe it's just, too much.
His books are really dense.
Okay.
Especially this one. And it's one of those things where you read a paragraph and you're like, I don't really know what I just read. So I get anyone passing on it. I just felt like I needed to finish it.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And widely regarded as one of the great American writers.
Yeah.
I guess the word is obsessive.
Yes.
And I feel like Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote Fight Club, I've read it or tried to read a few of his, and it's similar. It's like the obsessiveness about little items or little bits of knowledge, and to me, my brain doesn't quite work in that way, or maybe it does, and it, like you're saying, it's too much for me.
Yeah, it's like, it's a character that, to what you're saying, becomes obsessed with something, cannot let it go, and that's almost the arc.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a little bit different than, I would say, most characters where they're learning to let it go, and they do,
Right.
Or they're learning to get over something or whatever, and they do it or they don't. But it's almost like in this world he doesn't even try.
Doesn't even try.
Yeah.
And that's just similar to the Larry David thing that you pointed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, the world's crazy, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I see you got one more book.
Okay, I got one more book just because I thought it was kind of cute. So this is a sitter.
Okay.
So
what's
so
a
Jewish.
sitter?
It's a Jewish Bible book, and I wanted to bring this because when I was growing up in New Jersey, when I went to Hebrew school, one of the classes when you were a certain age, the moms and the dads, probably just the moms, honestly, which is weird, but to think about now, but would come in and everyone would be given by the temple a sitter, which is a Jewish prayer book, like every prayer for basically most holidays are in here. And you were given it, and your family would decorate it for you. So this is from like 1998. I still have it. It is a deck. My mom decorated this.
How sweet.
Just get it for the camera.
How sweet. Got a New York Yankees logo big over a little photo of, is that you on the front?
That's me on the front.
And I'm wearing New York Jets jersey?
New York Jets jersey, a Philadelphia Phillies hat.
Okay.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah, AFC East or NFC East rivals.
And then this is also the New York Yankees, New York Mets logo for the 2000 Subway World Series.
The Subway Series.
I don't know why I brought it in. I just sometimes I look at this and it makes me realize, wow, my mom she loved me.
She did. You can see it. She put a lot of thought into this, and it seems like a happy childhood.
Yeah, happy childhood for sure.
A lot of sports, a lot of playfulness, your teams, some dolphins.
She knew me.
Yeah.
And this is in my house now, and one day if I do have kids, I will pass this down.
Oh, that's really sweet. And do you think reading in that way at that age and, reading religious texts like that, do you think it informed you as a writer and as a reader now, building that basis?
It's an interesting question. I will say with like Nickelodeon and like the breakdown of the Torah, like the biblical stories, like the, are my first like lessons in storytelling. Like the first time I'm, Jonah and the whale is like one of the very first stories probably I was ever taught and learned about like character development. It's just like it's basic story structure. So I think so, yeah. Like my first comedies were like Hey Arnold and Rocket Power and Rugrats. Like that's like where I'm 4 or 5 years old, like learning joke structure at a very small level. But these things from your past that you're like don't think about as having an effect. It's like there's no way that didn't make me think about that stuff.
Yeah, and pretty cool that when you came in here today with your pile of books, that was significant enough to bring along.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, Noah. Well, I've really appreciated talking to you about books. You're a great guy. It's
Thanks,
been
man.
a long way, a long time that we've known each other, and really happy you joined us today.
Thanks, man.
And thanks for reawakening the Michael Crichton Jurassic Park.
Guys, he's got so many good ones.
Get after it, guys. I do want to read a few book recommendations from our listeners if you're cool to hang out with me on those. Yeah. Great. So there's 2 of them. Reminder to our listeners, in the comment section of our YouTubes, like this episode itself, give us some book recommendations. Write us a paragraph about a book you want people to know about that's really been impactful to you or fun or anything. We're here to hear it. And in the comments, it lets people talk to each other about the book. So it's an open loop. So I will read the first recommendation. Thank you all thank you to everyone who's sent them in so far. All right, this one. 6 days ago from Simplicity Reviews 2020. First, this podcast is fucking great quality, but people haven't caught on yet, so keep pushing forward. I'm with you. My book recommendation is War is a Racket by Smedley Butler. This book is the most important book ever written in U.S. history. It chronologies the birth of U.S. imperialism and is written by the United States' most decorated war veteran. The reason Smedley is so important also is because he became an anti-war activist. Butler also was pivotal in stopping a fascist coup during FDR's presidency. If you read A People's History by Howard Zinn, you will find the fascist coup was successful when Truman was forced into office and Henry Wallace was kicked off the presidential convention floor by the capitalist class. I mean, sounds right up my alley.
Wow.
Yeah.
I almost brought in The People's History.
Did you really?
But then I was like, you know what? I don't think we should. I don't know if we want to go down that,
Yeah.
do that.
Because once we go down that road, we got to get into all of it.
Yeah.
And speaking of like world anxieties.
Yeah.
No,
but that is a great, that sounds really interesting. But The People's History, I feel so lame, but when I first read that book, which wasn't honestly embarrassing that long ago, totally changed my entire worldview. I was like, how come we're not reading this in high school?
Because it doesn't benefit the people who write the other history books, right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot out of that book.
Yeah.
And I've had to I've started and stopped it so many times because of the rage that bubbles up inside me.
It's crazy where you're like, wait, what I learned, I didn't like that's what Columbus did. Are you kidding?
It's just monstrous.
It's so crazy.
It's just a monstrous experiment of a nation that we're currently recording a podcast in.
Yeah.
In the belly of the beast. We are in Beverly Hills, California. So we are like at the epicenter of the whatever this thing is that we found ourselves born into, that a lot of people feel grateful for. So it's all about attitude. Okay, the second write-in comes from Nick Vanilund 5431. Thank you so much for creating, maintaining, hosting, whatever word works in this podcast. It's such a pleasant little oasis. Thank you for that. My book recommendation is Revenge of the Lawn by Richard Brautigan. Sometimes I'll mention a love for Brautigan to readers, writers, and sometimes they'll squirm at what they perceive as an inaccessibility due to his occasional weirdness. In Watermelon Sugar, Rommel drives on deep into Egypt, trout fishing in America, etc. With the stories and Revenge of the Lawn, Brodigan shows that he is able to perfectly tread the line between the bizarre and the grounded. It is a great introduction to the author. I just thought that was a nice kind of rec.
Yeah.
Doesn't get into too much detail, but kind of awakens us to a new name. I know Brodigan's like a famous poet too, if that's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's odd. I write poetry. I don't read a lot of it. So
Oh, no.
yeah, I'm always looking for recommendations.
Is that you not wanting to be like too informed by other people and trying to like find your singular voice, or?
Yeah, maybe. It also just feels kind of daunting.
Yeah.
Because when poetry doesn't line up with you, it's like really annoying, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to find a voice that kind of speaks to you in that way.
Yeah.
And so much of it is just like, yeah, you got to really love words and language to a degree that's even beyond how I feel about them.
Yeah.
To really get into it. I don't want to think too hard. I want to think just hard enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess part of me is a little cynical.
Yeah.
But when I encounter poetry, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
And it does something that no other form of verse or prose really can do. So, all right. Well, those are our reader recs. Noah, thank you so much. I'm so glad these last couple of years have been fruitful reading for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your marriage and all the books to come.
Yeah. In my next honeymoon, I'll read again.
On your anniversary.
Yeah.
All right. Noah Findling. Check out his podcast. Check out everything he does. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And thanks for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Happy reading. Thank you for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Be sure to like, subscribe, thumbs up, any kind of thing that could help us get listened to or watched by more people. We really appreciated having you and hope to see you again next week with a new guest and plenty of books. Take care until then.